Lawyer Mark Silverthorn used to work for collection agencies. Now he helps people faced with abusive debt collectors.
It's maybe 25% of collectors who work at collection agencies are engaging in illegal, unprofessional, or unethical behavior.
Hey guys, it's yet another episode of PRsonalities, where people build businesses. It's your host, Konstantin Polyakov, and today I have a special guest, a consumer lawyer. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Silverthorn.
Pleased to meet you, Konstantin.
Thank you for coming out.
My pleasure.
Mark, I think that the term consumer lawyer is something I don't think I've heard in the industry very often, so I wanted just you to first introduce yourself and the specialty of law that you practice, because I think this is going to be an important definition of what we're talking about today.
Well, I describe myself as a consumer lawyer because I represent consumers. I don't represent creditors, and I don't represent collection agencies or debt purchasers. The tagline that I've chosen for my law practice is Mark Silverthorn, barrister and solicitor PC, assisting Canadians struggling with debt. And that really summarizes what I do.
So really the specialty of law we're talking about today is something very close to my heart, something that I also am dealing with day in and day out, and it is debt.
That's correct.
Mark, I wanted to kind of first and foremost kind of introduce not only as a lawyer but also an author. Mark actually has written a book called The Wolf at the Door, where he describes a lot of the processes, a lot of the implications of dealing with collection agencies, debt collectors or creditors. And I wanted just to kind of talk a little bit about that as well. So besides being a full-time lawyer, you're also an author. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about how that book right here helped you to push your career forward.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about timeline. So the book has been written for about, I think it's about 9 years. This was published in 2010.
Correct.
And the idea for the book came obviously from your practice.
Well, I'll have to go back and give you a little bit of my background. Is for 12 years, I was a collection lawyer.
Oh, so you were on the other side of the barricade.
I was one of the bad guys.
Okay, all right.
And I had an epiphany. My 8-year-old daughter asked me what I did for a living. I asked my 8-year-old what I did for a living, and she said, "You send letters to people saying pay their bills, and if they don't pay your bills, you put them in a garbage can."
Okay.
And I said to myself, is that really what my life is all about? And so it wasn't that much longer that I decided not to represent creditors and collection agencies anymore. And I thought I would take all that knowledge that I'd gained over 12 years and use it to help consumers who are struggling with
So for 12 years, you were actually you're working for a different law firm, I assume. Is that correct?
Well, I've always had my own law practice. Mm-hmm. But for a 12-year period, I believe from 1994 to 2006, I worked almost exclusively for 4 of the largest collection agencies operating in Canada. Wow. And my law office would be physically located on the collection floor. So I would open my office door and there would be anywhere between 50 and 100 collectors outside my door. And I would work on a daily basis with the owner or the president or the collection manager or the IT person or the HR person. I'd have lunch with collectors. So I really, got to know what's going on underneath the hood. And that really puts me at an advantage helping consumers because I've got all that insider's information.
That's amazing. So from 12 years of practicing law for the big, I guess, banks and creditors, like you said, right? Like the big debt buyers.
Yeah, my clients would have been collection agencies.
Collection agencies primarily.
But we would have been collecting money on behalf of creditors, big banks, mm-hmm. and also, I guess we would have done some work for debt buyers as well.
Is that right? So I guess just so people are also a little bit more familiar with this. So I think generally people know what collections agencies are all about, right? Their goal is they often will take debt from somebody like a big bank like TD Canada Trust, or maybe Rogers or whoever that is, and then they would essentially they would buy it, right?
Well, let's talk about the definition of a collection agency, and
That's right.
that is a company that's primary business is collecting debts that are owed to others.
That's the actual definition.
Okay. Now, some collection agencies will purchase debts, but that's a secondary business line.
Oh, is that right?
Okay.
So from that, I guess a collection agency would again hire a third party, sometimes when I guess it's a larger debt.
Well, they might hire a law firm to sue an account. The one thing I'll say, when a collection agency is collecting an account on behalf of others, it's doing it on a commission basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're so aggressive, is because if they don't collect the account, they don't make any money.
Nobody gets paid.
They're not getting paid by the hour to call people and ask for money.
That's right. So really now that you are working on the other side of the fence, now you're working with the consumer, right? So our goal here is to make sure, what are we trying to help the consumer with? We're trying to help the consumer settle the debt.
In some cases, I mean, in some instances, what I'm trying to do is help the consumers so they don't have to pay any money.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be taking advantage of a limitation period, or if they've been sued, taking advantage of a defense. And at some point we may talk about a recent case I was involved in where my client had been sued for $43,000 by a debt buyer.
That's right.
I was able to successfully defend them, and the judge dismissed the case. So my client didn't have to pay the $43,000, and now we're waiting to find out if the judge is going to award costs and how much. I mean, the judge could potentially award as much as $7,000 or $8,000 in costs.
Oh, wow. So, I guess really what I was really trying to lead us towards that article as well. So I actually saw you post an article about this. This was quite a big deal. I saw that you were recently interviewed by one of the news channels about this as well. So we are talking about, that's Canacide, am I correct?
Yeah, there's one of Canada's largest collection agencies, one of Canada's largest debt buyers. It's based in London, Ontario. It's the Canacide Financial Group. Now, they have a number of affiliates. Mm-hmm. One of their affiliates, Canacide Credit LP, they sued my client on an account they had, I guess, purchased from Scotiabank for $43,000. And I raised two grounds. One, that they were operating as an unregistered collection agency, and secondly, that they had not proved that there was an absolute assignment. And on the basis of those two grounds, the motions court judge dismissed the debt buyer's lawsuit.
So I think this is a great example of really just kind of showing and putting practice to use. You have, exactly like you said, you have a very specific definition of what a collection agency or what a debt buyer is, and in this case, the debt buyer, being Canacide Financial, didn't really have the grounds to sue for what they were trying to go after. Is that correct?
Well, I guess, I don't know if it was being sloppy or whatever, but because I've worked on the collection agency side for 12 years, I sort of know a lot of the chinks in the armor of the creditors or the collection agency or the debt buyers, and I'm able to take advantage of those.
Very interesting. Mark, and the most important question, how did you get into this?
Well,
because I guess the thing is that, we always talk on the show about different paths, right? So people, they're growing up, they want to become lawyers, and then when they want to become lawyers, they don't necessarily know what kind of lawyers they want to become. And then as they start developing their practice, they start going towards various very special, side of that of law. So just very interesting. These are very, again, this is a very specific niche. It's very close to my heart. This is all the stuff that I'm hearing. I can really relate. I see a lot of these things happening on the market with the collection agencies going after people and suing, and then having a lawyer on your side who knows how to defend is a great asset. But how did you get into this?
Well, it wasn't, when I went to law school, this was not what I anticipated that I would be doing. When I was in law school, I was very active in politics.
Is that right?
I was an aide to Roy McMurtry when he was Attorney General. And at one point, I envisioned a career in politics. And after I finished, I probably spent about 5 years being an aide to politicians. And then I moved into being a lobbyist. And so back in the mid-'80s, I was the spokesman for the anti-Sunday shopping lobby. And that was my first real experience doing media work, because I was the public spokesman. And so I would be learning how to pitch stories to media outlets. And then after that, then that's how I just ended up taking a job with my law practice started to do a lot of work for a collection agency, and then that was what I did for the next 12 years. And then I moved to then representing consumers.
Very interesting. So really it came from, I guess, pursuing path of career in politics, and then going into law, and then specializing in debt and consumer law, right? And from there, from working for 12 years, you went on to writing the book. This is like it sounds very natural, but I'm sure that going from one side to writing the book, these are like big changes. Just even stepping away from working within a law firm, or sorry, not working with a law firm, I should change that. Working for a large debt buyer versus working for a consumer, that's also a very big shift in focus.
Yeah, and from a practical point of view, for me to leave the collection industry, and then where, a collection lawyer can make a lot of money.
That's right.
Working, there's lots of people who will pay money to a lawyer who's helping collect debts, but then to go and start out a practice where you have no clients, and then you're going out getting one-offs with consumers, that takes much longer to build up a practice.
So we always like to talk about the switch, right? So switch from the big customers or the corporate world and working towards consumer, working towards something that, again, you really kind of gravitate towards more, which was, in your case, working with the consumer, right? Switch from one to the other. Did it happen all at once, or did you kind of slowly build out your book of business with the consumer while still retaining some of the corporate business that you had before? Or did you just one day went cold turkey and said, you know what, this is the day we're going to just change focus, we're going to go straight into consumer law from now on?
No, it was cold turkey, because in the debt collection business, you're either on one side of the fence or you're on the other.
That's right. So, I figured because of conflict of interest, right? Because a lot of the time you would probably be stumbling upon scenarios where you are working with a consumer who probably has debt owing to the corporate customers as well.
I guess one of the pieces of advice that I would give is that it's really important for people, when they're choosing a career, to do something that they're passionate about.
That's right. That's right. And like you said, like in this case, especially switching focus after you had that frank conversation with your daughter where you weren't comfortable with what she was telling you she thought you were doing. I think that's a great example of shifting your focus, working towards building a book of business you're comfortable with, you like working with, you believe in your goal and what you're doing for the customer versus just, again, rolling out that bank.
I can tell you that I will, every week or two, I'll get a phone call from someone who said, I bought your book and it saved my life, or it saved my marriage. And you can't put a price tag on that in terms of what it means to you.
That's right, the feeling, right? Let's talk a little bit about the book, right? So from that to writing the book, how did you come up with that idea? Because that's also a very unique way to, first of all, spread the word, share your experience, share your knowledge, and also build a bit of a fan base. And I think you're doing quite well with that.
Well, before I got the book deal with McClellan and Stewart, I actually wrote an ebook, and I think it was a how-to guide for dealing with your debt or something like that. And I wrote that book, and I market it myself. And I was also appearing about once a week on the Peter Silverman show on Saturday mornings on, I think it was CFRB. And so I said, well, why don't I go out and get a literary agent and see if I can sell it. I contacted probably 25 literary agents and nobody was interested. And I think I found one literary agent, and he charged me $750 to read my other one. And he said, listen, I think I may know a couple of firms. And so then he called me up and he said, Margaret Atwood. And he said, how would you like your book to be published by the same company that publishes Margaret Atwood? I said, that would be very nice.
Amazing, and that's how it all came together. So there is something that we actually got, the little piece of media I would like to bring up, Brendan.
Next week on Marketplace, they come after you,
This has to be paid by close of business today.
whether you owe money or not.
Pay your bill, pay your bill, pay your bill.
When debt collectors are wolves at the door, and you are their prey.
They don't care where you get the money. They don't care if you rob a bank.
It made you feel sick to your stomach when you heard the phone ring.
So what's going on? All collection agencies are bound by provincial rules meant to protect us. In Ontario, they're spelled out in the Ontario Collection Agencies Act. Lawyer Mark Silverthorn knows that act inside out. He's written a book all about debt collectors. Silverthorn used to be a wolf at the door, using his legal muscle to scare people into paying up.
I represented collection agencies for 12 years. And I think in fairness, I'm going to have to represent consumers for at least 12 years to undo all the damage that I did over those 12 years.
So that was quite an interesting approach to getting the video out in public. So how did the CBC Marketplace video come together? How did it all come together?
I think that CBC wanted to do a story about collection agencies, and it's my understanding that the producer of the show, that her mother had purchased a copy of The Wolf at the Door.
Oh, is that right?
And that's how the producer had heard about it. So
Incredible. And I guess from there on they just reached out and they did the special. So what other, so it sounds like from the book there was a lot more media opportunities. What other things did you get into?
yeah, because if you've got a book that's published, then all of a sudden you're an instant expert. And there are people out there who've self-published books and they may not know very much, but I think the media just assumes, and the public as well, that if you've published a book, you must be an expert.
Well, I mean, if you had 300 pages worth of experience and knowledge to share, there must be something in there.
But the thing is, it is possible to self-publish a book. So it might cost you $15,000 or $20,000 to do it, but you may not know anything. But I guess what I'm saying is, there are a lot of very successful people. I think The Wealthy Barber, I think that was self-published.
Was it?
I believe so.
Amazing.
So, for your listeners or your viewers, if they're interested in doing a book, you don't have to go out and get a major publishing firm to publish the book. You can self-publish your book, and it could even be as an ebook.
That's right, and I think right now, after having the hard copy published, your book is available as an ebook. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And that's available on?
I believe it's Amazon.
Amazon? Just Amazon?
Well, it may be available on McClellan and Stewart's website as well.
Understood. So guys, if you would like to check out the book, again, the ebook is available on Amazon and McClellan and Stewart. Now, so from publishing the book, going on CBC Marketplace, I think you also mentioned you were on Breakfast TV, Global News, Peter Silverman Show.
Yeah, I was on breakfast television probably about 12 years ago, and that was after I had published the ebook. So that was before The Wolf at the Door.
Oh, is that right?
I think after I published the ebook, then I started to be a guest on Peter Silverman's Saturday morning show, and I was probably a guest about once every 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's
and then as soon as The Wolf at the Door was published, then there were all kinds of media opportunities. There was one day I did interviews on CBC radio across the country. I do like a little 2 or 3 minute interview, probably 15 of them across the country at different stations.
Oh, amazing.
But yeah, I've been on global national news 3 times.
And this is all effort just from you actually reaching out to a lot of these?
Yeah, I think that what people need to appreciate is that if you want to get media coverage, typically you have to go and pitch the story idea. And in most media organizations, they'll have an assignment desk. And so what you can do is you can call them, and you may have about 60 seconds to interest them in an idea.
That's it.
Or what you can do is send them an email,
Yeah.
and then call them and try and sell them.
I see. That may be better structured.
But I had a story that was published on July 2nd in the Law Times, and they would have never published that unless I had contacted the editor and pitched the idea.
So really, I think the rule the lesson to learn from this is don't be afraid to pitch. Don't be afraid to reach out to a lot of these media outlets because they are looking for stories, right?
That's right, and they're not going to publish a story that they don't think that has merit. I mean, there's going to be certain things that are going to attract them about a story. And you know, for every story, for every time that I get an article published in a newspaper, every TV interview I do, every appearance on a radio show or a podcast, you know, I've probably have unsuccessfully pitched something, you know, 95% of the time. So, you know, I'm only probably successful 5% of the time with those pitches.
Hey, 5% of the time is still good because a lot of the time, you know, 5% of the time is all that it takes.
Right. But I want to emphasize that it's a lot of work to do this pitching.
That's incredible. And so just so we can kind of put this in perspective to our viewers, your team is yourself
and my wife
and your wife,
and we have an American bulldog.
So that is the dream team.
Yes.
Incredible, Mark. That's a lot of success for only a team of 3.
Well, you know, there are some. I do outsource some work, so I don't know if your viewers would be familiar with Fiverr. Fiverr.
Yep.
I use them for all of my graphic design work, and I use them for if I need videos edited. So I'll use them. I've got a social media consultant that I use. Her name is Kim Slonwhite at ClearPath Media.
Shout out to ClearPath Media. And so really that's all just very specialized parts of your business. But really the meats and potatoes, the business that you run is really yourself, your wife. You guys are the ones who are administering and working with customers, arranging these, scheduling these opportunities, kind of really thinking them through and building the strategic plan around it.
Correct.
All right. So the other, I think, lesson to be learned from this is have a good partner by your side who can really help you build that out. So what does your wife help you with really? What does your wife help you with around the business?
She does all the non-legal work. Like she'll do the books. Mm-hmm. She's my IT support. So
they're lucky.
Yeah, you know. So, and she just does a lot of things that I don't have to worry about, so that I can concentrate on the legal part or concentrate on the marketing part.
That's right. Amazing. So I mean, you know, I'm impressed with the volume of results. I mean, all these different media appearances. If there's something to be learned from this is, I think more people should really be trying to reach out to PR departments from a lot of these different news channels. They're always looking for stories. They're always looking for something exciting and new to show to their viewers. So, like Mark said, a lot of the time it will maybe take you, out of 100 times that you will call up and you'll contact a news channel, you'll contact a publisher of some sort. 95% of the time you may not get it, but the 5% that you do get it, this is still very impressive. Still very, very impressive.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it may be on a slow news day. Mm-hmm. You may get lucky, and your story, they may say, let's go with that story. or if there's a big earthquake, or the government falls or something, or.
But you know what? Even that in itself, like something to be said about constantly being present within the professional network as well, right? You being able to go out there and find these media opportunities and publish and get noticed over and over again. I mean, even just your own professional network that you are working with, I mean, everybody is noticing. Like, I have you on LinkedIn right now, and I'm actually following the whole story without the kind of seed financial story about that, the debt buyer that Mark was talking about earlier. And that in itself is already achieving the purpose of what a lot of this media presence is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep you first in mind in your professional context, in your network, consumers, even just consumers that don't know about you, right? Guys that just simply read about you online, or the guys that just read about you in the newspaper or on TV or whatever that may be.
Well, let's just take the example of why I'm here today.
That's right.
I would say about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wrote a post about the Canaseed story, and you liked it, and then I sent you a message, and then I said, why don't we have a phone call? And we had a phone call, and then we met, and then I got the invitation to come here. So LinkedIn is an incredible way to sort of let everybody know that you're out there.
That's right.
And it's almost like a virtual meeting.
The virtual cocktail party.
That's a perfect way of describing it.
And again, something to be said about that as well. Utilizing those channels, right? So having article on LinkedIn is one part of the of this PR and media setup. The other part is you actually reaching out and saying, "Hey, I saw you liked my post. You must have interest in this topic. Let's chat," right? So another side of it as well that I'm also very impressed is the effort and the result that comes from that as well. I mean, that's enormous, because I'm guessing that very few people actually follow through like that. To watch your article, receive that viewership and attention, and be able to do something about it. That's really the power of LinkedIn today, like you said, right? So being able to do that and get media opportunities out of being present and available on those channels is the real power behind it. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, that article in the Law Times, which came out like I guess a week or two. Well, no, it was on in the last 4 or 5 days. The Law Times article came out. I pitched a trustee, like a licensed insolvency trustee, and so I think in 10 days' time, I'm doing a podcast with him.
Oh, amazing!
And this will kill you. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but in later this week, I'm doing a podcast with the president of a collection agency.
Oh, all right.
So that's with Greg Matinsky in Hamilton. He's the president of Go Beyond Collection Agency, and he has a very interesting background. He's very well educated, and he's the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. And he's the owner of a collection agency, and he's just a prince of a guy. And it's funny. I've been in the collection industry for 12 years in the past, and I do have some friends in the industry. And one guy, after I left the collection industry, he invited me to his wedding.
Oh,
and
amazing.
It was all people in the collection industry at the wedding.
And then there's all the people that you're probably seeing in court. Amazing. So speaking of LinkedIn, like we talked a little bit about that. Mark actually has over 120 articles on LinkedIn that you can go and check out today. How long did it take you to build that much of a resource of articles?
Well, I mean, for example, the Canaseed story that we just spoke about how I successfully defended a consumer who had been sued by a debt buyer. Because I've been spending so much time working on that case, it was very quick for me to write the article. And I think I've probably written about 5 articles in the last 3 weeks on that case. But in the past, I've written some LinkedIn posts that involved a lot of work, and they would be what I would describe as investigative journalism. I've actually sent people in with hidden cameras to get footage. And some of my LinkedIn posts, I'm basically asking the question, are these companies engaged in unethical or illegal behavior?
That's right.
And I don't pull any punches. But you see, conflict is a great. I mean, people like to see conflict.
Well, it's something to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Something to talk about. So I mean, obviously, when they see conflict, they see a story.
Yeah.
But so again, so the articles that you are posting, you're continuing with them. Again, something really interesting about what Mark is doing is he's actually viewing the people actually who are liking the post. If it's somebody who's in the professional network that's worth contacting, he's actually reaching out. He's saying hello. Something I think many people should really be doing when they're engaging in professional activity on LinkedIn. I should be doing that more, which is giving me ideas about posting articles of my own. But I really do like that part of it. And how did you get into publishing on LinkedIn in the first place? Was that something that you also saw somebody else do, or that just something that came to you naturally?
Somebody must have suggested to me to publish on LinkedIn, and over time, I mean, I'm on my dashboard for LinkedIn. It says that I'm an all-star when it comes to LinkedIn as an author. One of the really cool features of LinkedIn is when you write an article, you get to see the demographics of who's reading your articles. So if I write an article about a particular company, unless they've hidden their identity, it'll show me. You
will see exactly who it
I'll
is.
see the name of the company that's reading the article.
I really do like that feature of LinkedIn, and I mean, as I've had premium before. I use it. There's pre's that I go on to, and when I will get premium for LinkedIn, I'll use it and I'll contact different professionals that also, like you said, will engage actively on LinkedIn. And sometimes I fall out of it, but I do find that feature is quite useful, especially if you are, like you said, if you're active, you're posting articles, if you're engaging in conversation, because people are always looking you up, right? Everybody who is dealing with you, even just in a natural course of business. If you're dealing with somebody, whether it be a collector or whether it be in the mortgage business, a lawyer or a real estate professional, I think having a very good LinkedIn core to your business is very important in 2019, because that is often the very first thing that you see when you search somebody online.
Yeah, and one of the things I should say is I don't have a LinkedIn premium subscription. I'm just a regular LinkedIn member.
That's right. I mean, the premium, there's a few features to premium that are great. It's a bit of more of a spend. I think the basic premium package, I think, is $30 or $35 per month. So I mean, it's up there. There's a bit of a cost to it, but it does come with the ability for you to see a little bit more as to who is viewing you, do a little more in-mail messaging, right, where you are able to message on LinkedIn. Otherwise, if you don't know somebody on LinkedIn, you really can't contact them without this in-mail feature. But again, if you are engaging, then I think that's where there's a bit of an opportunity to reach out and actually engage a little bit more. But even just like you said, even being a non-premium user, just having a very good LinkedIn account, a lot of content, hundreds of articles in Mark's case, some maybe video content, and just a very professional page about yourself. I think that's one of the things that is often overlooked by a lot of the professionals 2019. I think that should be kind of almost like a face of your business, because very, very often that page will get ranked first. When you search somebody online, before sometimes your own professional website, before any other accounts that you may have, you actually may see LinkedIn as the very, very top result, because they are trying to make sure that you're reachable and you're organically very well searched online when people are looking you up.
What I do typically with the LinkedIn articles is I'll have some sort of graphic at the top, and it'll tend to be a real attention grabber. I mean, and then the headline will be I'll have some SEO, make sure that it's good from an SEO perspective, and it may also be intriguing. And then at the end of the article, I'll have about the author, and I'll have a link to my website, because I want people to go to my website. I'll have my my logo, the graphic at the bottom, and then in the middle of the article, I don't just have text. I'll try and make sure I use subheadings. I'll try and I use a lot of graphics in the body of my LinkedIn posts, and I may have even add some video.
Amazing. So as Brian was just scrolling to our audience through the LinkedIn articles, as you can see the actual setup for yourself. And so let's just talk a little bit about also the thought that you actually put into the messaging of your content. your communication with the stakeholders, with your viewers, people that are they're reading your content, viewing your content. What message do you want to position? What is your positioning towards those stakeholders?
Well, my LinkedIn posts probably fall into 2 or 3 different categories. One is educational. There may be certain developments in the industry, and typically what I write about is usually either about the debt collection industry or the debt relief industry. And the debt relief industry is that industry that holds itself out as helping consumers who are in debt, and often I feel that some of those companies are actually preying on people who are debt challenged. But that's sort of the focus. I don't usually write outside of those parameters.
So it's really directed towards consumer a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, although I'm not sure how many consumers actually read LinkedIn. I mean, I think LinkedIn tends to be more business people and more entrepreneurs. One of the things that writing on LinkedIn has done is I've actually got some ghostwriting work out of that.
Oh, amazing.
I'm not sure. I probably get more consumers calling me as a result of the YouTube videos.
Oh, that's another channel we should talk about. And so the YouTube videos, you started doing that roughly, how long ago was that?
Oh, I've probably published YouTube videos over the last 10 or 15 years.
Oh, incredible. So there's quite a bit of a backlog of videos for viewers to actually go and check back on.
Yes, and they're on 2 channels. One is called Mark Silverthorn, and the other one is called Mark Silverthorn Lawyer, and there's probably over 100 YouTube videos, and they tend to be educational. And it's important in your YouTube videos that it's not an ad.
Right, of course. Like natural content.
Right, you have to provide something of value.
That's right.
And I find what happens is you start developing. A lot of people say to me, "I watched a lot of your videos, and the last slide in my videos always has my name, my phone number, and my website." And the purpose of the video is to invite someone to call me, because if I'm going to get a client, 99% of the time it's because somebody called me.
Of course, of course.
And so the whole purpose of social media is either to get people to visit my website or to get people to call me, or I guess sometimes to send me an email.
Amazing. So again, guys, you can see on screen as Brandon is pulling up those the 2 channels that Mark talked about. And this is a catalog that's continuously extending itself. You're adding more videos to it, you're building more on top of it, you're staying current with the latest changes in the industry, with latest updates about your practice. So this is also a very nice sticky way of keeping it with your audience. And so these are really the 2 main channels that you're capitalizing on. You're capitalizing on LinkedIn, where you're posting articles, and you're trying to engage with a lot of the professional network contacts that you have. And there's your YouTube channel that also could be a great resource for a consumer, and also other professionals as well. And I think that in itself builds quite a good media presence of a sort that we can have for both the consumer, the professional contacts that we have, and potentially people that we haven't met yet, that are going to be looking you up and probably looking to reach out and potentially do business with. So this is a nice setup. I really do like that. I mean, being in the industry that's very paper heavy, and there's a lot of substance to the content with things that are very specific, right? There's, if you're trying to utilize Instagram for your type of industry, I don't think that would be the right channel. If you were trying to utilize Pinterest, that wouldn't be the right channel. But I think that LinkedIn, I think for a lawyer in 2019 is probably #1 choice. YouTube is probably, maybe I'd say second. You're also, I think, present on Facebook a little bit as well, you said, right?
Yeah, I've just sort of started to use Facebook, and I use Twitter a little, but it takes a while to build up a following.
Of course, but I think Facebook is also the right place to be for a lawyer as well, because a lot of the time I think Facebook, as we notice that a lot of, I think, the aging millennials are starting to still using that platform as their #1 and go-to platform, and I think that's also a very big demographic that you're probably going to be dealing with both today as well as in the next 5 years, the next 10 years as you're going about your practice?
So one of the things I try and do with my YouTube videos is keep them relatively short, and I also try and just focus on one issue.
Okay.
So, you know, I can remember I did an hour-long interview on Rogers Community Television in Guelph. It was 60 minutes long, and we probably got about 12, 1-minute YouTube videos out of it.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it would only deal with one issue in each YouTube video, because I don't think I really think it loses its value if you start dealing with more than one issue in a YouTube video.
That's very true, and this is something to be said about also micro content, right? Like you said, if you have a long form content, you're able to utilize micro content and reuse it out of your long term content. That's just great value, and also again creates a little bit more media presence. Something that I think again is good. Kudos to you guys for doing that, and for video editing of any sort for those larger pieces of content. That's when you use Fiverr
Yes.
and these types of contractors. And this is again something to be said about, you don't necessarily need to know somebody who does video editing to be able to do that effectively. Like Mark said, having today's tools, today's tech such as Fiverr, and I remember the days when everybody used to use freelance.org. That was the place to go, and you were able to get a freelancer to help you with work like this. And there are ways. So if you're not skilled at video, if you're not skilled at social, you're not skilled at whatever that may be, that technical skill that you need, don't be afraid to get a contractor. It's very affordable. It's very effective.
I had Fiverr do my corporate logo, and Fiverr, I have a guy who does all my editing for my videos, and it's incredible. It's very reasonable, the prices.
Yeah, again, I love the setup. I love how efficient it is, right? Like you said, being yourself, your wife, you guys are the really people who are running the practice, but having this kind of ability to utilize the best of latest technologies, the best of latest social media practices, I find it to be very, very impressive. And so do you want to do any shout outs to any of the companies that you worked with? I mean, we talked about Fiverr, we talked about the social media company that you also work with. That's, I guess, the wealth of your current setup. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would like to do a shout out to Kim Slonwhite at ClearPath Media. I mean, she's been an incredible assistance with my social media, and I can't say enough about Fiverr. And I can't say enough about my wife, Danielle.
Shout out to wife Danielle. So listen, as we kind of come a little bit closer to the end of our show, I wanted to just kind of I had really two questions left in my list. One was I wanted to ask you a little bit more about developments in that industry that you're currently a part of. So we're talking about the Kenneseed article. I'm going to have Brendan also right now pull up that on screen as well. So people can actually follow the story right now by following you on LinkedIn, and I would recommend do that if you're interested in learning more about Mark, his practice, and a little bit about that industry in Canada and Ontario, and especially locally in Toronto and GTA. I would recommend following him on LinkedIn so you can stay in touch. And right now, are you working on any more up-and-coming articles about this problem?
Well,
or topic, shall we say?
Why don't we just back up for a minute, and I'll just explain what happened, and then we'll talk about what.
I think that's a good idea. Please.
So, in April of 2018, Kenneseed Credit LP sued my client for $43,000 on a number of accounts that they say that they had purchased from Bank of Nova Scotia. And 3 weeks before the trial, I get a call from a lady saying, I saw some of your YouTube videos. Can you represent me? And I said, okay.
Amazing.
So I brought a pretrial motion to strike the plaintiff's claims on two separate grounds. Number one, the collection agency was not registered under Ontario law and shouldn't be entitled to sue my client. And secondly, they hadn't provided enough documents to prove that there had been an absolute assignment, because they have to transfer 100% of their rights. One of the things that your listeners may not know is, or viewers may not know, is that when creditors sell their debts, they may retain the rights to recall the debt. Mm-hmm. And so that means there's not a real sale or an absolute assignment. And in those circumstances, a debt buyer should not be entitled to sue the consumer. So on those two grounds, the motions court judge threw out the case. So now we've made submissions regarding costs, and it's possible that my client may be awarded costs, upward in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. That's a possibility.
Amazing. So this is still ongoing?
Yes, I mean, in small claims court, the unsuccessful party has 30 days to file an appeal, and so they have another couple of weeks to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to file an appeal.
And this is also very interesting. So, how often have you seen a non-licensed body try to sue somebody like that?
Well, the story is a little bit more complicated because Canopy does have one affiliate.
A division.
They refer to it as an affiliate.
Affiliate.
Because they're separate corporate entities that is licensed.
But this one is not.
But the plaintiff, the company that owns the debt, is not licensed or not registered as a collection agency.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Again, I know I'm gonna be following. So again, if anybody is looking to learn a little bit more about this aspect or topic, or just in general, stay in touch with what's going on with the debt industry, I would highly recommend following Mark on LinkedIn. Wealth of knowledge and wealth of content.
If I could just add one more thing.
Yeah.
I think what this recent case with Canopy shows is that if people have been sued by a debt buyer, they may be in a good position to be successful.
That's right.
If you're sued by a debt buyer, you're in a much better position than if you're sued by the original owner of the debt.
By the creditor. So I guess if you are in a position right now where you are in a situation where there is quite a bit of debt held against you, and there is a debt buyer who is acting on behalf of the creditor, perhaps there's an opportunity to talk to Mark.
Right, and one of the things I'm surprised I haven't said this already, I offer a free 10-minute telephone consultation. So
I like that.
If there's a person out there and they want 10 minutes of my time, they're welcome to call me, and I'm more than happy to give them 10 minutes of my time.
Very amazing. We actually are going to also, I'm just going to stress the importance of the links that we have below Mark's name as well. Make sure that you follow and you do reach out to Mark if you had any questions, and take advantage of the 10-minute consultation to make sure that you know your rights as they pertain to your debt. Mark, we like to give our audience tips, and we like to believe that a lot of the viewership that we have is people who are entrepreneurial, they're looking to maybe get into the industry that is similar to yours, maybe up-and-coming lawyers or just business owners, startups. What are some of the tips? You have a very long career. What are some of the tips that you would like to share that really kind of helped you get your career to where it is today? In the last, what has it been, like 20-something years in the legal industry and especially that industry?
Well, I guess the first thing is be passionate about what you do. When you're passionate, then you enjoy what you're doing and it doesn't seem like work.
I like that.
Some of the other things are, if you have a success, then you have to go and blow your own horn because no one else is going
to do it for you.
And if you want to get media attention, you got to work for it.
You got to work for it. You got to really pick up that phone.
And in terms of what LinkedIn, what people like to read about, I mean, number one, they like to be educated.
Yep.
And they like to watch a good cockfight. They like conflict.
Controversial. We had actually another also episode earlier that we talked a little about controversy and also conflict, and I think in a way that like you said, you have to really be your own PR agency. You have to really go out there and contact different media channels and really blow your own horn and let the world know, because like you said, a lot of the work that we do in our professional industries, whether it be the legal industry, whether it be the mortgage industry, whether it be the film industry, a lot of the things that we do really often get unnoticed. And they get unnoticed because a lot of it could be, hovered by this bigger industry, by bigger news that the news channels are covering. So really it is your responsibility to make sure the world knows about it, whether it be through LinkedIn posts, whether it be through articles, reaching out to media outlets. And so that I really do like that. I really do like that as a tip as well. I think very few people are utilizing that or know how to utilize it well. I think that was three. That was 3 tips right there.
Okay.
Anything else?
There's probably other things that I could say, but I don't know. I guess you have to be very strategic with your time.
That's
I mean, time is a very limited resource, so you've got to be sort of brutal with your time. Huh?
Gotta make sure that you're spending your time where it is going to pay off. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a real pleasure. I'm again going to just encourage everybody to please make sure to like, follow, share the content from today's episode. Make sure to follow Mark as well on LinkedIn and on YouTube. His channels are right below his name. Mark, thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure, Konstantin.
Real pleasure talking to you about the debt industry and your journey into your business. This was your host, Konstantin Polyakov. Guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. Make sure to subscribe, share, like, and all that fun stuff, and we will be with you shortly. Cheers.